Get ready for an adventure into a land that feels like it belongs to another time. In the scorching Danakil Depression, the air carries a strong sulfur smell while the ground lights up with glowing colors once night falls. Inside a historic walled city in the eastern highlands, a fearless man offers raw meat to dangerous wild hyenas that come out in the darkness. Perched on a high cliff 4,000 meters above sea level, a gelada monkey sits watching. The sun disappear and makes calls that scientists say sound just like spoken language. This is not the Ethiopia you see in the news headlines. That version is real, but this one is much older and deeper. Here you find the oldest human bones ever discovered on our planet. Along with the site of the world's first Christian empire. Amazing churches have been carved straight down into solid rock, and their surfaces are still smooth from 800 years of faithful hands touching them. A massive valley is ripping the continent apart at a rate of 2 centimeters each year. Ancient ceremonies that existed before any written records are still performed today. Ethiopia doesn't just hold pieces of ancient history, it is living ancient history right now. It keeps burning with energy, it keeps cracking open, and it keeps being experienced every day. Very few travelers make the journey to witness it all. That remains one of the most surprising facts about global travel. And the explanation comes in 6 incredible chapters. Right under your feet, 3 giant tectonic plates keep pulling away from each other. The Afar Triangle marks the exact spot where the Arabian, Nubian, and Somali plates slowly drift apart, widening by 2 centimeters every single year. This is not some quiet desert resting on solid land. Instead, it is an active rift that is still forming right now. In 5 million years, the ocean will flood in. For the moment, the rock barely holds everything together. The journey downward lasts exactly 20 minutes. Lush green hills slowly fade into dry scrubland, and then into total emptiness. Every trace of color vanishes from the scenery as the winding road plunges far below sea level. Once the high plateau vanishes behind you, the temperature jumps past 45 degrees Celsius. There is simply no shelter anywhere. This place has never known shade in its entire existence. The Danakil Depression never turned dangerous over time. It has remained fiercely hostile since the beginning. 116 meters below sea level, it stands as the hottest place on Earth, where humans actually live. The Afar people have called this area home for thousands of years, which reveals incredible human toughness. It also hints at something deeper and harder to describe about how people connect with the harsh lands that shape their entire way of life. When darkness arrives, the entire horizon begins to shine with an eerie red glow. Erta Ale rests at the very center of this low basin, a massive shield volcano topped by a bubbling lava lake that has stayed molten non-stop for more than 100 years. Local Afar people call it the entrance to the underworld, while scientists view it as a direct peek into the planet's molten core. As both names feel perfectly accurate, the lake keeps shifting and cracking, then sealing over only to crack again. It looks like the Earth is practicing how it appeared long before any atmosphere formed and before the very first living cell split apart in warm, ancient seas. Surface temperatures soar past 1,000 degrees Celsius. Thick steam shoots upward in tall columns while the ground itself seems to moan in protest. Standing on the edge of Erta Ale brings any person closer to witnessing the planet's fiery birth than anywhere else alive today. This is not some distant theory or old rock layers studied in a lab. It is raw present-day power happening right in front of you. People call it the Smoking Mountain, yet that label barely captures the wild beauty here. Suddenly, vivid colors explode everywhere. Bright neon, yellow acid green, and pure sulfur white dominate the scene. Brine pools react with the air and form stunning towers and colorful terraces that look impossible. Shades of Oryl and a striking orange straight out of an old chemistry book left baking in the sun fill the landscape. Dalo's hot springs force superheated water up through thick salt layers covering the basin floor. Wherever that water touches oxygen, it creates the most intensely colored terrain found anywhere on Earth. The pools register a pH level of 0.1, which is even more acidic than battery acid. In 2019, scientists proved what the scenery had already shown. Some pools at Dalo contain absolutely zero microbial life. No tiny organisms, no hardy extremophiles, nothing at all. Dalo could be the only completely lifeless spot on the planet's surface. The world owes us no guarantee of being livable. The long camel caravan heads north, climbing steadily toward the rugged Tigray Plateau while the deep depression drops away far below. Now, we keep following, but not toward any busy salt market. Instead, we head toward something far more ancient. The road leaving the Danakil slowly regains color, shifting from dull brown to warm ochre, and finally into the rich green of the Ethiopian highlands. It finally stops at the rim of a deep pit carved into solid rock. Look straight down 12 meters below the plateau surface. A complete church rises upward to greet you. It was never constructed upward from any foundation. Monks carved it downward from the living rock, using simple iron chisels, starting back in the 12th century. The famous Church of St. George measures 32 meters on every side. Its roof forms a perfect grid of equal armed crosses that sit level with the ground, so anyone standing at the edge looks directly down onto the ceiling. The entire building sits below you. King Lalibela commanded 11 such churches to be hewn from the solid rock of this plateau. After returning from a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, determined to recreate the holy city in stone. The massive project took many decades to finish. What no one disputes is that 800 years after the final chisel strike, these churches remain fully active places of worship. On Ethiopian Christmas, known as Jenna, which falls on January 7th, 60,000, pilgrims flood into Lalibela and press their hands against the very same stone the original monks shaped so long ago. The doorways have been polished smooth not by wind or rain, but by centuries of devoted human touch. This is what deep faith looks like when it becomes solid stone and simply refuses to fade away. Three dramatic shots open the sequence. First comes the sweeping aerial view. Next, the pool surface ripples in slow motion. Then the crystal towers catch the soft desert light. Suddenly, a huge dust cloud rises on the distant horizon. Inside that cloud, hundreds of camels appear moving in one long curving line across the vast salt flat until they fade from sight. Men wearing indigo head wraps walk steadily beside them. No one says a word. This ancient trade path has operated for at least 1,000 years. Afar workers cut heavy salt slabs from the basin floor using only hand tools. Each slab weighs 30 kilograms, and every camel carries 4 of them. The long columns trek 3 full days northward to Mekelle, joining a trading network that once stretched all the way to Sudan during the powerful Aksumite Empire. Nothing about the technique or the route has changed across centuries. Only the price of salt has shifted. These tough men cross the planet's most unforgiving terrain as casually as if it were an ordinary Tuesday. The Afar do not simply survive the Danakil. They truly belong to it. That difference matters more than you might think. "300 kilometers farther north, a tall granite needle climbs 24 meters, straight into a clear blue sky. The famous Aksum stele was carved from one single piece of stone, weighing 100 60 tons, and raised by an ancient civilization that traded with Rome, Persia, and India. The Aksumite Empire officially embraced Christianity in 316 AD, making Ethiopia one of the very first Christian nations on the planet, even before England, France, or most countries that later sent missionaries to Africa. The biggest stele ever attempted here has already toppled over. The ones still standing represent the survivors of that era. Ethiopian Orthodox tradition states that the Ark of the Covenant rests inside a chapel in this very city, watched over by a single monk who is forbidden from ever leaving the grounds. The claim is made plainly, with no extra explanation needed. Farther south of Aksum, the high plateau climbs once again. At its highest point, a powerful king created something that seems completely out of place, yet fits perfectly. 5 grand castles spread across 12 hectares, surrounded by a 900-meter outer wall that once protected a royal city serving as Ethiopia's capital for 2 full centuries. Emperor Fasilides started building in 1636. Later, rulers added towers, a library, stables, a bathhouse, and a chancellery. The style mixes East African stonework with Portuguese Baroque arches and rich Ethiopian Orthodox symbols. Yet every visitor ends up using the same word to describe it: castle. Gondar completely changes how people picture where castles belong in the world. The drone sweeps around as afternoon sunlight turns the stone, a warm amber color, letting 14 centuries of Ethiopian royal legacy appear in one unforgettable frame without any need for permission. These magnificent structures were created long ago. Then the eyes of the Western world simply looked somewhere else. Beyond this high plateau, everything changes in scale. The next chapter cannot be boxed in by any walls. It can hardly be contained even by an entire continent. The dramatic escarpment appears without any warning. The highland road bends sharply, the trees vanish, and suddenly there it stands. A sheer wall of basalt columns plunges 1,500 meters straight down in one vertical drop. Fog drifts upward from the valley floor far below. The entire African landscape spreads out in every direction, looking like a continent that has not yet decided its final shape. The Simien Plateau erupted 40 million years ago, sending lava across the highlands where it cooled and was slowly sculpted by erosion into the continent's most breathtaking cliff scenery. Hanging valleys, sharp vertical columns, and peaks rising above 4,000 meters create a stunning sight. Ras Dashen reaches 4,550 meters, making it the 4th tallest peak in all of Africa. On clear days, its long shadow stretches across the valley floor, like a giant sundial marking time longer than all of human history combined. The mountain existed long before any animals lived on it. Those animals appeared long before any records of the people who later followed them. The Simien Mountains form a living timeline written in pure altitude. Right at the cliff edge, a face appears. A male gelada sits calmly on a narrow ledge with 1,500 meters of empty air behind him. Staring at the camera with the quiet confidence of an animal that needs to prove nothing. His chest shows a patch of bare skin so vividly red, it looks painted on. That color deepens whenever he feels excited, revealing a heartbeat the camera can capture if it waits patiently. He opens his mouth in a wide yawn, showing 4 long canine teeth the size of a human thumb, then closes it again. He returns to grazing peacefully. Geladas stand as the only grass-eating primates left on Earth. They represent the last surviving species of a group that once roamed across Africa and Asia. They live only above 2,000 meters on these highlands, spending their days on the plateau and their nights on the steep cliff faces where leopards cannot reach them. A big troop can include up to 800 animals. They talk to each other using a flowing musical chatter that serious scientific papers compare directly to human conversation in both complexity and social purpose. Watch an entire gelada group head toward the cliff edge at sunset. Babies cling tightly to their mothers' backs, while older males bring up the rear. The whole line moves with calm certainty, like a community heading home after a long day. The gap between their world and ours suddenly feels very small. Just a kilometer from the gelada resting spot. Another creature is ending its day. Meet the Ethiopian wolf. With its beautiful russet coat, white markings, and slender muzzle built more for patience than speed. Fewer than 500 remain, making it the rarest wild dog species on the planet. These wolves live only on Ethiopia's high plateaus, where they hunt giant mole rats by standing perfectly still outside burrow entrances for as long as necessary. They have endured ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and the entire span of human evolution on this continent. Today they face danger because the highlands themselves are slowly shrinking. One perfect shot shows the wolf standing on the plateau with Afro-alpine heath behind it, as mountain light catches the rich russet fur. Then it slips quietly into the grass and vanishes completely. The escarpment edge now lies behind us. The drone tilts gently eastward and the ground drops away dramatically. A wide valley stretches 60 kilometers across and 2,000 meters down. The continent is literally splitting open right there below. We descend to take a closer look. Stand at the Simien escarpment rim and gaze eastward. The high plateau ends abruptly. The earth falls away sharply. Below you spreads a 60-kilometer wide valley running south, until it fades into distant haze. This is the largest visible scar anywhere on the African continent. The East African Rift System stretches 6,000 kilometers from the Afar Triangle in the north, all the way to Mozambique in the south. Ethiopia sits at its widest section. 2 parts of the African plate are moving apart at 6 millimeters per year, thinning the crust and lowering the valley floor. This is not ancient geology from the past. This is active geology happening live in front of us. The giant wound keeps widening slowly. Our earliest ancestors once walked out of this very rift. The rift lakes support life in ways that seem impossible, given the dry surroundings. Seen from high above, Lake Ziwe shows the wrong color. It is not blue or gray, but a constantly shifting bright pink that seems to move on its own. The view slowly reveals the reason. 1 million flamingos fill the lake. Their collective sound reaches you before the full picture makes sense. It is a low, non-stop roar created by a colony so huge it generates its own weather patterns. Flamingos thrive on blue-green algae that grows in alkaline water poisonous to almost every other creature. Their famous pink color comes directly from the carotenoids inside that same algae. They literally wear the color of the poison that keeps them alive. The Rift Valley creates these kinds of surprising contradictions everywhere you look. Farther south, the Awash River slices through the valley floor in a dramatic line of dark basalt rock and rushing white water. It ranks as one of the few Ethiopian rivers that never reaches any ocean. The Awash flows eastward into the Afar Desert, where it simply disappears. It ends on the same ancient plain where the famous Lucy skeleton was found. Mover is a pond. The valley guards its history with great care. We trace the river as far as the waterfalls, then turn eastward across the Haraj region. Heading toward a city that has kept the outside world at a distance for 14 full centuries. The long migration path finally reaches a massive wall. Harar's juggle stretches 3.5 kilometers of whitewashed stone. With 5 historic gates, its layout has stayed unchanged since the medieval city reached its final shape. It rises from the Haraj hills more as a proud statement than any defensive barrier. Inside you discover 82 mosques, 362 narrow alleyways, a unique language, a distinctive cuisine, and a tradition of beautifully painted inner courtyards that the rest of the world ignored for centuries. Harar was established in the 7th century and grew into one of Africa's greatest centers of Islamic learning. Some consider it the 4th holy city of Islam, attracting students from the entire Horn of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. No outside army has ever conquered it. A British force arrived at the gates in 1855, but never entered. Harar simply waited patiently inside its walls. The alleyways are narrow enough for only 2 people to walk side by side. The walls display warm terracotta ochre and soft pale blue tones. A trader walks past carrying a bundle of chat, the mild stimulant leaf that flows through the Horn of Africa and across the Arabian Sea in huge amounts, making it one of Ethiopia's most important exports. The market comes alive at sun. Arthur Rimbaud, the famous French symbolist poet, gave up writing at age 20, then moved to Harar, where he spent the final 10 years of his life working as a coffee and weapons trader. He never wrote another poem. The city has that kind of powerful effect on people. The last gate shuts at sunset. What happens next never enters through any gate. A man sits quietly at the edge of the old city, holding a basket filled with raw meat. In the darkness beyond the torchlight, 2 green eyes appear, followed by many more. The hyenas step into the light. They are large spotted animals with a distinctive sloping walk that covers the distance from shadow to brightness in just a few relaxed strides. War on war history. The people of Harar have hand-fed wild spotted hyenas since at least the 19th century. What began as a way to protect livestock has become a cherished tradition, and something that defies simple explanation. The hyena handlers call each animal by its own name. As many as 20 hyenas approach within arm's reach of a seated person. The boundary between wild and tame becomes a mutual agreement here, rather than a fixed rule. Both sides have accepted the same terms. The hyenas slip back into the darkness before sunrise. The gate opens again. The city wakes up. Harar has always known exactly how to coexist peacefully with things that other people fear. Outside the walls, the valley continues south and west for 1,000 kilometers. For Ding Dikis, we follow its path toward a special corner where modern changes never arrived. The southwestern part of Ethiopia does not announce itself with any dramatic scenery or famous landmarks at the end of the road. The Omo Valley appears first as a special quality of light that feels Monte-Sater. Flat, wide, and timeless, making the land below seem incredibly ancient and peaceful. So, the Omo River winds through golden grass and long, shining curves on both banks. As far as the eye or the drone can see, nothing resembles the 21st century. At least 16 different ethnic groups make their home here. The Mursi, Hamar, Karo Dasanich, and Nyangatom are among them. They follow traditional ways of herding cattle, practicing body art, and holding seasonal ceremonies on the same floodplains where their ancestors have been buried for generations. The Omo Valley is not some open-air museum frozen in time. It is a living place where outside interruptions simply never happened. A Mursi woman looks straight into the camera with calm confidence. She wears a large clay lip plate the size of a saucer, which serves as an important sign of identity and status inside her own culture, while the outside world has mostly stared without understanding. The Mursi include about 10,000 cattle herders who move with the Omo River's seasonal floods. Their language stands completely alone, related to no other tongue spoken anywhere on Earth. They have lived in this exact way long enough that their language has evolved beyond any comparison. The woman holds her gaze without turning away. 20 bulls stand shoulder to shoulder. A young man at one end wears only a simple loincloth. His face shows total focus, like someone preparing for a moment that cannot be reversed. He runs forward, launches himself onto the first bull, and races across all 20. Without falling, the crowd roars. Women wearing leg bells stamp their feet in rhythm. The sound fills the entire valley. Then it slowly fades away like water settling into place. This is the famous bull jumping ceremony called Ukuli Bula. It marks the moment a Hamar boy becomes a man, earning the right to marry and take his adult place in society. The tradition has been performed exactly this way longer than anyone can remember. Failure brings shame, while success brings full adulthood. The rules are clear, and that clarity feels like its own kind of kindness. 6 kilometers farther south, a boy stands at the riverbank, covered in white chalk and ochre. Dots form perfect concentric arcs across his chest, while stripes decorate his face. The design is brand new, created only this morning, specifically for his body, and it will already be fading by evening. The Karo people paint themselves every single day, not just for ceremonies. Each pattern is unique, and each one lasts only a short time. That temporary quality is not accidental. It is the entire purpose. The Omo River flows south into Kenya and finally ends at Lake Tana, 250 kilometers away. We follow it only in our thoughts. The drone rises above the river, the golden grass, the villages hidden among the trees in the valley that has protected its people exactly as it always has. Without needing any explanation, without offering any apology, and without ever coming to an end. This is the oldest story still being told today. The drone keeps climbing until the Omo Valley turns into texture, river grass, and faint patterns of settlements. It continues rising until Ethiopia appears exactly as it looked at the very beginning. Warm ochre highlands glow in the first morning light. Volcanic peaks hold the final traces of darkness. Here is a continent that stopped trying to explain itself long before we ever arrived with our questions. We started with fragile bones displayed under glass. 47 pieces of a woman who walked upright across this same plateau. 3.2 million years ago. Before any history, before language, and before anyone kept records. Everything that followed, including the fire inside Urta, Ale the rock churches, the highland castles, the wolf on the cliff, and the ceremonies on the floodplains all belong to her legacy. Those traditions remain active. They keep burning with life, and they continue being performed on the exact same ground she once crossed. Ethiopia is not a country the world simply forgot to visit. It is the country that existed here long before the world, as we know it even began. The oldest story is still being written.